And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. If you're into technology, you're going to love this hour. And if you like things like Back to the Future and flying, well, just wait a sec here.
Andrew is one of America's time travel pioneers in Project Pegasus, a secret U.S. time-space program being researched and developed by DARPA. Tell us about Project Pegasus.
Regarding Project Pegasus, that work is at the parking lot of the ITT Defense Communications Facility in Nutley, New Jersey. That we actually had to wear a crystal helmet that was sputter-coated with titanium to literally physically protect us from the energy field that we were placed in there in Nutley, New Jersey.
Andy, can you kind of describe for us the equipment, the best way you can, what it looked like, the time travel equipment?
The basic shop floor model consisted of two parenthesis-shaped objects about 8 feet tall. Now, between the two armatures, there was a field of radiant energy. The radiant energy, of course, that Nikola Tesla had discovered is latent and pervasive in the universe. And what we were doing was standing back and then leaping through that field of energy.
Are you saying, though, Andy, that they've got the capability to teleport human beings like we saw in Star Trek?
We asked, is this going to be like on Star Trek, where you stand on a little platform and put and turned into 1,000 bees of light?
That's right.
And,
Beam me up, Scotty.
And what we were doing was leaping through that field of energy. That pinpoint of light hit our faces. We were suddenly elsewhere in the time-space continuum.
How did they control where you were going, whether it was back or forward?
Well, in fact, initially, they couldn't control where exactly we would go back in time. So the farthest that I remember was back to around 1 million BC. I was sent to a hot red earth environment, and I found myself walking along a crest line for about 10 minutes, and then at the top of the ridge, I looked over to my right, and there were two huge dinosaurs with long necks chomping on tall grass. And we were told that they had sent us to around 1 million BC. It may have been earlier or later. It's very difficult for me to establish the precise times of these events.
What happened?
Now, to get us back to the future, and a later technology called plasma confinement, which they were using to get me to Gettysburg in 1863.
And why Gettysburg? Why'd they send you back there?
Well, that's a very complicated question, and it gives rise to some of the perceived threats to the validity of my story. Under the direction of Dr. Sterling Colgate, one of the Project Pegasus team leaders, Dr. Colgate asked me whether I wanted to go see Abraham Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address. But in fact, I was thinking back to my history education. I was a history major at UCLA, so and imagining that 1863 portrait of Abraham Lincoln by Alexander Gardner, where he looks basically like a chimpanzee in a black suit. And I was terrified by the notion of seeing Abraham Lincoln as he might appear during his life. So I had this hellacious journey to Gettysburg where actually my hat was ripped off, and I popped into view next to that road northwest of Gettysburg. So I then began walking without a hat. I didn't have a jacket. I was just dressed in the jersey of Project Pegasus. I met a gaunt teenage soldier, a Union soldier, walking along the side of the road, and I yelled to him, "Hey, friend, which way Gettysburg? The President of the United States is arriving here today, and I have to see him." And this individual stopped and squared his shoulders in the direction I was going and pointed that way. You're going in the right direction. And I followed him over to the dais with patriotic red, white, and blue bunting around it. Lincoln was going to be giving the Gettysburg Address right in front of the cemetery there.
Did they tell you, Andy, not to get involved in, messing up past events?
Right. Well, certainly, just in prescript, let me say I regard President Lincoln, who is one of our most brilliant thinkers and philosophers. I admire him very much. But we were trained to, for example, assassinate President Lincoln, that altered the timeline in the future and so forth.
Jeez, unbelievable.
My training kicked in, and even though at that point I really sort of wanted to see Abraham Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address there, and Abraham Lincoln ended up getting shot, quite brutally, in fact.
Oh, my God. That is unbelievable.
And a split second later, quite tragically, he slid off the dais and tumbled to the side of the cemetery there. Unfortunately, President Lincoln died there that night. And there were two Union officers who must be guards for President Lincoln, have noticed my presence, and they're wondering who shot him. and I was terrified that I might be bayoneted or something. And I ran past the Lincoln assassination site. The relocation that occurred when they powered Project Pegasus, I was sent back to Nutley, New Jersey, in the time-space continuum. In fact, that was the only time that I was involved in assassination as a time traveler from the future. It's
a very strangely compelling story.
So, sadly, my response to that conundrum is for example, if a particularly controversial political figure, let's say a John Lennon, was going to promote a particularly destabilizing political function, let's say a general strike, would create a warrant for assassination of that person.
Jeez.
So I think there are really profound, deep political questions that have to be asked.
All right, next up we go to Wenatchee, Washington. Ron is with us, west of the Rockies. Hey, Ron.
Yes, I'm suspecting that most people probably are not buying this. Would you submit a lie detector test or possibly bring forth some more evidence? And also, I think that the truth does not have a price tag on it yet. You're trying to sell tickets to see you speak for $99.
Well, might I ask you, sir? Might I ask you which U.S. government agency you work for? I mean, if you're going to allege that I'm a liar and that I haven't brought forth substantial evidence.
I don't think you've made any money at all, Andrew.
No, there have been probably,
well,
10 or 15 times, George, during my last couple of years of my truth campaign that I've been down to the food in my refrigerator. I'm actually protecting the interests of the American people.
Well, I suppose you got to pay $99 to hear you talk. Just take a lie detector test, or nobody's really going to buy this stuff. You need to back it up.
Well, you're making a set of allegations that are false. I just think that you shouldn't operate on the basis of sour grapes and realize that one human being has defeated the entire U.S. Defense Department in making this information public rather than keeping it secret. So I'm not really going to endure your chastisement. I have a right to be paid for my labor. $100 isn't as much as you think it is. I mean, the last time I went out with a friend and got some sushi and had a couple of beers, the tab was $150.
But he's got a right not to believe you.
Well, he's got a right not to believe me, but he doesn't have a right to call me a liar.
No, not at all.